Welcome to our most recent soul session presented by the Be the Change initiative of Creative Life Spiritual Center serving suburban Houston, Texas. And our special guest tonight is Reverend Eamon Duffy. I'm Jessie, Jennings, founding minister of Creative Life. And let me read you Reverend Eamon's bio that was advertised, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. He is spiritual director of the New Thought Men's Community, creator of the upcoming New Thought Men's Summit, which we're going to discuss in detail tonight, and a spiritual life coach who supports wholeness through heart and soul healing work. He found a deep spiritual connection in his early 20s through Mile High Church of Religious Science in Denver, which is a spectacular place if you've never been there. And through them also discovered men's soul work. Together, they have had the two places, the soul work and the church in Denver, have had a profound foundational healing effect in his life. He's been a licensed practitioner for over 12 years in the science of mind and spirit philosophy, and has led hundreds of men's groups, from individual small groups to major retreats and gatherings. He was part of the leadership team serving the Mile High Church men's ministry and has been in an ongoing personal men's group for more than 25 years. Reverend Eamon completed ministerial training at the Holmes Institute in 2022 and has written a book about the future of men's work called The Blessing Circle, which is about connection, community, and brotherhood, and a powerful belief in the brilliance of ourselves, the future of masculinity, and the planet. Eamon, it's wonderful to have you with us tonight. And on the virtually the eve of the New Thought Men's Summit, which kicks off, is it Sunday?
Yeah, Sunday the 22nd.
Sunday the 22nd, and then runs most, if not all, of next week. These soul sessions we've been doing since 2017, and they're the hook, I guess, is justice, social justice, spiritual justice, balance, equity, everybody having a seat at the table, everybody having a voice in the conversation. And we've never talked, we've had transgendered individuals on and spoken about trans and cisgender roles and sensibilities in the culture, but we've not had a conversation specifically about men's work, as in men's inner work, men's spiritual work, as a thing, as a discipline. How did you happen to come to that through Mile High and through introductions in your life?
Oh my goodness, Jesse. Yeah, that's a flashback. So I guess starting off early is I grew up, I have three sisters, and a pretty dominant mom. She was kind of more the masculine force in my mom and dad's relationship. And so I think there was a part of me, and my dad owned his own business, so he worked a lot. And there was a part of me that felt like I was missing something in my 20s. And when I found Mile High Church, I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And the first inner child journey I did there, of course, there were several people, and one of whom was in my actual group, who I actually wound up being in a men's group for 25 years with Tim. And but another of my buddies was taking that inner child journey, and he, through a person in his group, both of us wound up meeting this guy, Carl Kalin, who became our first mentor and started, he said, okay, we're going to start a men's group. And we were like, John and I were like, okay, let's go for it. And that was really the beginning of it for me. Just the deep healing work, just the soul connection, the experience of being around men, because I had been surrounded by women a lot of my life, even most of my life up until that point, and which was wonderful. But there was something that was palpably different in connecting with a group of men. And so then just continued to do that work and found the Men's Leadership Alliance and Tom Daly and Jeffrey Duvall and Keith Fairmont, who ran that for many, many years. They did weekend retreats and, a lot of different stuff that was outside of of kind of science of mind, philosophy stuff. So it was just men's soul work, really founded on, the mythopoetic traditions. And they had been doing that ever since. I mean, Jeffrey was friends with Robert Bly, and they knew all the guys who had started this and were friends with them. I think they kept a little bit of a lower profile than some of them, but it was just incredible. And so found this group of men after our men's group lasted about a year and a half. Carl said he was in for a year, and it lasted about a year and a half. So we didn't. I mean, it was fine, but we were both pretty young, and I think not as focused. But when I came into my new men's group, the Moonbellies, I was in that for like 25 years, and I can't even imagine who I'd be today without that circle of men. And none of them were in science of mind, but they were very spiritually open. And we just did the work. We got together and we sat in council and we just shared. And I think that's really where the true healing work happened for me, and I think happens for most men, is just the regularity of meeting with a group of guys, becoming familiar, becoming friends, building trust over time. I mean, we had, oh my God, Jesse, we had arguments in that group, damn near fist fights, like it was the whole thing. Like everybody brought everything that they had to that group, and challenges in relationship and challenges within ourselves, challenges with work, with life, with, spirituality, with just who we were in the world. And I mean, everything that is, you can imagine, we talked about in that 25 years of being together. And some guys came and some guys left and some guys passed on. It was the most amazing experience being with these men and just having them in my life. And they're still in my life. We're just not in an official group anymore. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of my origin story, as it were, to find that outside of New Thought, and then simultaneously becoming a practitioner and being very active with Mile High Church here in Lakewood, Colorado, and then helping with their men's group later on, after I had been doing men's work for probably 15 years. And love that. Love this, bringing the spiritual aspect in to the men's work. And so when I decided, okay, I am going to be a minister and go to ministerial school, I actually sat for a whole year and just asked myself, okay, if this teaching allows us to do anything, be anything, then Spirit, what am I here to do? What am I really here to do? What are my gifts and talents? How do I bring out that genius, that brilliance that my soul is here for and to serve? And of course, the still small voice is like chuckling in the background. Well, you silly human, just put those two things together that you've been doing for 30 years. Hello, pretty obvious. It was that for me was the green light. And I think within a week we had created the New Thought Men's Community.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Did you know Reverend Mike Baker?
I've heard the name. I don't think I've ever met him.
He's passed on now. He was minister in Colorado Springs in the 80s and 90s. Oh, yeah, and he was really one of the first people to bring inner child work to religious science centers. Yeah. He was not, how do I put this? He was not greeted with universal acclaim for doing that, because it was seen as negative. It was seen as, why even go there? Just pray it away. Just affirm what you want and success and achievement, and you'll have it all. But he identified as Bly did, and Michael Meade and John Lee and all of these people that you're familiar with in the men's movement. He identified that soul hunger that that we can have, where achievement doesn't take us where we want to go, and we have to explore the. And as I'm hearing you describe this, it sounds to me like your woundedness was very subtle. You had a happy family, a happy childhood experience. It sounds to me like you're describing, but certain things went unanswered. Certain things went like, who am I in the culture as a man and as a member of the, well, shall we say the elite? Because in our culture, that's the role that's thrust on us. We're supposed to be the leaders and the hunter-gatherers and the providers and so on. So, yeah, well, God bless for doing this work and leading others in the way that you have. So, you are Irish, are you not, sir?
A wee bit.
I would have thought so. Have you drawn heavily from the Celtic mythopoetic tradition in what you do?
Okay, somewhat. My given name was and is Edward Duffy, and I'm named after my grandfather on my mother's side. And there's this whole thing that I went through in my 30s that I had a rite of passage. And I was raised Catholic, so they have kind of a I would call it a pseudo initiation into which really kind of indoctrinates you into the Catholic Church rather than being an actual mature man in the world or a mature woman in the world. And so I never really felt like I got this threshold crossing, like this, hey, you're an adult now. You're officially a man. Okay, it's time to step up and take responsibility for your life. And so I felt like I missed out on that. And so Tom and Jeffrey and Keith with MLA did a beautiful ceremony for me. And of course I wanted to create, I'm like, I want this and I want this. And they're like, do you trust us? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I do. And they're like, okay, you got to let go of what you want, and we're going to do one for you. I'm like, oh God, here it comes. And it was incredible to experience that and to be able to look back at that and say, yes, that was the day. That was the moment where my psyche really was activated and allowed to move to that next level, right? And so I had worked a lot with archetypes, as you know, was prevalent in those early days of especially the mythopoetic tradition, to work with the king, warrior, lover, magician archetypes, and so I had really invited in through this art piece that I had created into this next step of, because in that tradition, it's like a pyramid, the Jungian pyramid, right there. Mm-hmm. So there's like, for the king, you start out on the base, and we see a lot of this playing out right now, is there's the high chair tyrant, the bully, and then there's the impotent prince. So someone who's totally disempowered. So we see a lot of this kind of playing out, especially with men who haven't had some kind of initiation or some kind of process in their life where they're encouraged to move into that upper part of the pyramid, which is the maturing of those. It's necessary for us to be aware of, the high chair tyrant in all of us. All of us started out like that. I want my dinner, as a child. We're crying in the crib. I want attention. Mm-hmm. Or the silent, just sitting there. Oh, poor is me. I'm not going to get the attention that I want. And, so having both of those experiences allows us to move up that pyramid into becoming the mature, king, or the mature leader, as I would call it now. We're trying to kind of get away from those archetypes in this next iteration of men's work. But there is that maturing process that happens over time where we do realize, oh, the true king is about service. The true king isn't about himself getting, having what I want. getting to rule the kingdom, and it's all about me, me. And, instead we're really that truly mature individual, that truly mature leader is all about leadership, is all about stepping up and standing for those who don't have a voice, or those who are struggling, or those who are in need. That's the true maturing of moving into that archetype. And so during this process, all this stuff is going on. This is a long roundabout story, but all this stuff happened. And then I said, I have to get away. I've got to go somewhere and do this. I had done a lot of Native American sweat lodges and vision fasts and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, I got to go somewhere to get away from this life that I have been far too accustomed to. And so I went and worked in Antarctica for 3 years, 3 winters. And when I was down there, a friend of mine who grew up in Ireland started calling me Eamon. And I'm like, why are you calling me that? He's like, well, the Gaelic word for Edward is Eamon. And I'm like, oh my God. And being that in those rite of passage, those older rite of passage traditions, you took on a new name representing that transformation and becoming a new person. So when I got back here to Colorado, when I was 32, I took on Eamon, and it has just kind of grown and grown. And so it's just who I am now. But it was a beautiful process of becoming for me, and becoming who I wanted to be. And that men's work mixed in with the science of mind and spirit philosophy was just that transformation that I was truly seeking, and allowed me to kind of birth into this new life and become a practitioner, and ultimately become a minister, and just really focus my life in this new way, in this new possibility of my truth of being a spiritual man in the world and wanting to serve that. So yeah, that's the long story of how I got the name Eamon.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, that's an old tradition, the renaming. I mean, I was confirmed an Episcopalian, and they told me pick a saint.
Yeah.
Do they do the same in the Catholic Church? You take a confirmation name?
I think there was a confirmation name.
Yeah.
I don't really quite remember it, but yeah, that's the tradition, is going through confirmation, and
this is beautiful because it picked you. See, you didn't, and it's like when you talk about the initiatory experience with your friends, and you're planning it like a party, and I want this and this, but not this, and they're like, well, that's not an initiation. An initiation leads you in the darkness, man. It leads you into the stuff you don't know.
Yeah.
So, the trust falls and all that kind of thing.
And the uncomfortableness of it too. The first thing Tom said to me was, okay, you trust us? Get naked. I'm like, gee, of course. This is back in the day, men's work was a little more drumming and kind of letting the wild man go, as Robert Bly would say. But it was like, okay, we're going to make you uncomfortable right away. But it was such a beautiful experience that's on our list of things that we're creating for this ministry is rite of passage programs. I just went through my midlife rite of passage, and we really don't honor these transitions into elderhood, into midlife, into being a young man in the world, 20s and 30s, and especially in our teenage years, from 13 to 19, the biggest time of transition for any of us as human beings, period. And to be just kind of let to the wolves of like, okay, good luck with this. You can drive at 18. We could drink at 18. Actually, when I was back in my day.
Me too.
And so it was like, okay, there you are. You're a man now. You can drink and drive. And so it was just like, okay, that didn't cut it for me. It just it wasn't the it leaves a longing, I think, for me and my soul of like, what am I, those ancient questions of Plato. Who am I? What am I here for? Is this it? And so spent a long time kind of searching for and just checking into different religions. I went from Catholicism, and then when I was out of my parents' house, I went to Hinduism. They thought I was in a cult. Buddhism, Native American traditions, and all kinds of just different stuff. Just seeking, just wanting to find, like, what is the thing that really calls to me and works for me. And then I found New Thought, Science of Mind philosophy, and I'm like, oh, this is it, baby. This is the thing, because it allowed me to bring all the things that I loved from those other traditions and just integrate them into this amazing, positive, uplifting, nurturing philosophy that says yes instead of no to everything. No, you can't do that. No, that's a sin. No, that, all of that. No. And this was all yeses. And so I absolutely was, just loved it and ate it up, and still do. I still love it. 30 years later, I still love this stuff. And it still blows my mind, every day.
That is phenomenal. I remember reading Joseph Campbell, and it had never occurred to me until I read his words about the reason we have gangs in the culture is we don't have rites of passage.
Yep.
Young men don't know where to turn. Old men don't know where to turn, and to have a companioning energy of other individuals as you go through these life changes makes them so sweet and profound, and it ties you to your heritage. And you realize, it's like the realization that comes to us at some point that our parents, when they had us, were very young, which as a child does not cross your field of vision. But as you get older, you realize they didn't know, they were figuring out who they were.
Yeah.
And how at each stage of the game, people are confronting realities that they haven't perceived before. These thresholds, as you say, now I'm 40, now I'm 50. Now who am I supposed to be? Yeah. So we reach out to one another in this way. You mentioned nudity, not to dwell on the point, but I read about that in spiritual tradition in Wicca. They call it being sky-clad. Mm-hmm. And it's in a lot of ancient spiritual traditions for reasons ranging from the highly pragmatic, like you're not carrying a weapon, to stripping the ego down to nothingness, because anything you wear is a presentation of class and agency and strength and where you fit into the caste system. But naked and alone before the throne of God, as Revelation, I think, says, puts us out there. I know the Mankind Project, that's part of what they do. Take guys out in the woods and everybody gets naked together. And there's a huge amount of, I'm not a part of that program, but I know a lot of people who are, and there's a huge amount of shame that goes into that. Oh my God, I can't, because comparison of physical proportion and shit like that. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with MKP. I know it's a great organization. I know tons of guys who've gone through that program and love it. Mine was with the MLA group, the Men's Leadership Alliance. And so I would say for me, it was a perfect experience because it was more, it wasn't necessarily the break you down, build you up military model. They really didn't. It wasn't a warrior initiation. It was the initiation to the inner self, and so there was a lot of solo time on the mountain. Just go up and out and sit with yourself. Versus, like, I think the Mankind Project is a little more kind of break you down, build you up military type of model. And which is beautiful in a sense, and I think there's guys who really connect with that, and there's men who really connect with maybe the gentler initiation of what what is it that's within me that's beckoning me?
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely the piece that really worked for me, because I'm more of a tender, sensitive, person and human being, and so the break you down, build you up model wasn't going to work for me, and so I definitely found my path, which was awesome. But after Tom said, okay, get naked. Yeah, there is that letting go of, okay, great. And then, we did some beautiful ritual. And then at the very end, they shaved my head and took the hair off. And it was such a, I mean, to this day, I still do that sometimes. And coming back from Antarctica, I did that. And, different times in my life, I have either cut my hair or shaved my head when my dad died a couple years ago. And it was just, there are these, now it's associated in my psychology that says, okay, look out, when we shave that head, like, stuff's going to change. Yeah. And it just turned it into such a powerful personal ritual. And I think that's the thing that we really, as New Thought people who take responsibility for our own spiritual path, can stand and say, yeah, what is meaningful to me and what brings meaning to my life, and to use those pieces to be able to help us grow, to help us understand that inner, those inner beliefs, those inner philosophies, that inner programming that we got growing up, that we got from teachers, that we got from all kinds of people, to help us. And I think ultimately the motivation on some level of people is to be of help, to be of service to others. Now, sometimes it causes wounding. My growing up, my mom's best intention was to help me be a good student. I was a C/D student. We didn't know at the time that I had dyslexia, that I was a neurodiverse person. And so her idea of helping was me sitting at the table and doing more schoolwork. And I was like, oh, this is torture. And so, to be aware of the impact, and that, I think that was a part of that core wound that you talked about earlier, that all of us have on some level. And it wasn't as much about my mom as I found out, but it was more about this neurodiversity that I have, and growing up in the age that I did, and it just wasn't caught until I was 30. And so here I am thinking, oh, I'm not smart, I'm not, and goes into all of that sense of self-esteem that really erodes away. And then, even being suicidal in my teenage years. Man. Because it was just like, what am I doing here? Like, I feel like it was, I'd rather be any place but here. That's how painful it was. And so, to have to work through that stuff, and to have to realize and to find that inner strength, to find that inner resource, to be able to say, yeah, this just isn't me. I'm a creative person. I have different gifts and talents. And it actually took me going back to ministerial school, going into the wound, as it were, to be able to really heal it. And it was tough. It was tough 5 years of ministerial school, but it was probably the deepest healing that I've ever done in my life, and such a beautiful experience to go through. Not that there weren't challenges and struggles all the way through that, and still to this day, still reconciling what, my neurodiversity outpictures as, how I get help, how I get support, and to not let that shame come in, not that pain come in, not let those old voices come in. And so much of that stuff is training from New Thought, from Science of Mind, from voice dialogue work, working with the inner voices in our head, the practical, just spiritual practices of meditation and centering, prayer, treatment. all of those things that really nurture us on a regular basis, that hold that high vision of, oh yes, I am this divine being. There is this higher self in me. And paradoxically, there is this human part of me that is this body and this heart and feelings and this mind. And finding that place in New Thought to say, hey, there is a part of you that's deeper than all of those wounds, that is greater than all of that, all of those struggles and those traumas and those challenges that you've had in your life. This is the truth of you. And when you align with that, then the healing really gets to happen on a much deeper level. And that has, that's been a 30-year journey now that has just been incredible and allowed me to realize so many of the dreams and desires and things that inspire me to live life every day as best as I can, as much as this spiritual being, but also as this human being, right, who has all the challenges and has to drive places and stand in lines and do all the human stuff as well, and to find that place of, for me, compassion with myself first, and then be able to show up and go, oh yeah, oh, you need to go by, let me get over for you, instead of like, you jerk, what are you, or why is the line going so slow? Come on.
Why does this always happen to me?
Why does it happen to me? That victim, right?
Hang on just a second. My there we go. My power save mode just kicked in for some reason. We could do a whole evening and should on neurodiversity. Because that's not really something that we've addressed in this forum before, and it needs to be. And God, what an inspiration you are to me and to everyone who comes in contact with you for your conscious work there. Yes, we all learn differently, and yes, we are all incredibly powerful, creative beings, and yes, we're all of a mind that's bigger than our brain, more powerful in our brain because it's infinite. And in the time we have, which I'm looking at the time here, and I don't want the evening to get away without suitable attention being paid to the New Thought Men's Summit that's coming up, because I really want to drive as much through whatever we can do here, drive as much traffic to that. For those of you who are watching, it's absolutely free. You just have to register. And what we're planning to do at Creative Life, and I think a lot of centers are planning to do, is we're going to start up a men's group based on the content in that. David Lemaster, one of our practitioners, is going to lead that project up. And so that we think, because you got, 22 different?
Yeah, 23 different speakers. Most of them are CSL ministers, because of course that's the community I come from. This is our first annual, so we'll do it every year.
Great.
And it's I think for me, this has been a 3-year process to get this thing going. So it has been a journey, and to get these, and you're one of them. Our conversation, I was actually going over it the other night for the final edit, and I had such a great time talking with you, Jesse. That was so much fun.
Me too, man. Thank you.
And I look forward to come back and talk about neurodiversity as well, but we'll do it another time. But the motivation behind this, ironically, you mentioned Mike Baker down at Colorado Springs CSL. Norm Bouchard, who took over there, was a good friend of mine. I met him at Mile High. We became practitioners together, actually. And he was my mentor when I finally became a minister. He was a minister for a long time, and a priest before that for the Catholic Church, I believe. And so we were good friends, and he was like, hey, you really, we started talking about doing something like this. And he's like, hey, that's the thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so then it took me, 3 years or 2 years of him kind of poking at me about that. And then unfortunately he passed. But the idea was deeply planted, and to be able to bring this to our community and to have these, not only these talks, because the summit has will have talks from all these 23 people, about a 20-30 minute talk, which are just incredible. But then also we did an interview podcast afterwards. And so what we have on this site now is we have a treatment, an opening prayer, we have a talk, and then we have an interview that goes deeper into the discussion of what they were talking about. And so what that looks like, out picturing wise, for our community is, as you mentioned, one of our deep desires here is to provide support for men's groups in all of our New Thought and CSL centers. And so by doing this, we created a plug and play men's group scenario where somebody can simply get 2 guys together or 10 guys together, however many guys want to show up. You hit the treatment check, goes, and then you spend 15 minutes checking in, 20 minutes, half an hour checking in, and then you watch the video on whatever talk, whether it's forgiveness or joy or abundance, or there's just so many things that we talked about. And then you can have a discussion on that for the rest of the time that your men's group is there, and then hit play again and do a closing treatment. Or if you're bold, one of the guys could step up and do a treatment, even though it doesn't need to be perfect. But this is about practicing. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because I have 25 years of being in this men's group. I see what it's done for me. I mean, these guys saved my life for sure, multiple times. And it allowed me to become the person that I really wanted to be. And sometimes that was through the guys pushing me. And sometimes that was the guys lovingly supporting me and finding my journey and my path and my way. Being patient, listening to my bullshit stories over and over again until I got sick of them, and ultimately we do. In men's groups, part of it is just the listening. Like I think we don't get that in our society. We don't have a place where we truly go, and except really our spiritual centers. But we don't have that place where we can go and be in sacred space and be held and truly listen to the story and hear the story and tell the story, so that we can get it out of our system, so that we can say, yes, that was my story in the past. That's not who I am today. I get to choose a different life every single day if I want. I get to have it different. I don't need to be the victim. I don't need to be wounded. I don't need to be the asshole. I don't need to be, whatever it is. I can be my authentic self. And that's really what we're seeking to find. I think all of us as human beings on this planet is, who am I authentically? What am I about? What is my spirit inhabiting this body that has drives and desires and experiences? What does this spirit want to channel through me and bring into the world? Because we look around in this world right now, we're challenged. All of us are challenged. Men are challenged, women are challenged, teens are challenged, kids are challenged. We really need those places where we can go and be our authentic selves and explore and find our purpose, find our mission, find our meaning, our values. And we've got 3 great videos on those. Dan Granda, Jeff Ryan, and Dennis Merritt Jones all talk about those things, about having the values. How do we know what our values are? And then how do we take that into visioning? And then how do we pull our purpose, our mission, our reason for being here on the planet out and help draw that out? And so it's just been a labor of love to have all of these amazing guys come together and be a part of this in support of ultimately creating men's groups, both in New Thought centers and maybe some outside of New Thought centers. I mean, the hope is that, and we tried to present it in a way that it would be very palpable to anyone, to any guy who was like, hey, I could use some support. And, to be able to share it in a way that was empowering, supportive, nurturing, optimistic, and allows them to go, yeah, hey, I could get a couple friends together and we could go through this. And so we not only have community memberships, which help start those men's groups, we also have individual memberships for guys who just want to watch the video, want to come online and be a part of one of our men's groups, or start their own. So this is, it's interesting because in these times of challenge, I think we as men are really trying to figure it out, what is the spiral for us as men and as masculinity? The old models really aren't working. We know that, we see that. We see them kind of flailing around and in their death throes of wanting to be let go of and wanting to embrace something new, but we still don't have solidity on what that is. And so we're seeking, like, how do relationship works? How do relationships work? How does this spiritual growth thing work? How does my life or my business or my abundance, how does that work? Mm-hmm. And so to be able to have a place that holds that high vision, as we do in the Science of Mind and in New Thought, how do we hold that high vision for what is possible and what is unfolding in the 21st century for healthy, generative, kind, loving masculinity to show up and say, yeah, this is what we're seeking. And we see it starting to show up too. Mm-hmm. Out picturing politics and social experiences. Man, when I was, first started out in men's work, there was hugging that happened. But I mean, the young men these days are just all about that love and just hug each other so effortlessly and without shame or guilt or any of that stuff. Okay, maybe I'll tell this story. So I decided, my dad, who was part of the silent generation, mm-hmm. His dad was a doctor. And so there wasn't a lot of encouragement and love for him growing up. But after about 10 years of men's work, I decided I wanted to do an experiment with my dad. And so I went in and I hugged him and before I left, and I held it for like 2 seconds longer than was comfortable for him. And it was brutal. At first, It was brutal. But I held it. And then I said, okay, love you, Pops. I'll catch you later. And, he was a smart cookie. It took less than a year for him to then want the hug. The open arms were coming in, you get a hug, and leaving, you get a hug, and an I love you. And, so in less than a year, 70 years of programming shifted, right? And so it can happen that quickly. Yeah. It can happen like that. And as we evolve and as we take these next steps, I think that's the bold masculinity showing up, of saying, yes, let's take that next step. Let's go into that uncomfortable realm. Let's do the inner healing work that we need to do to grow our own consciousness, which in turn grows that collective consciousness of what do we want to be as men in the future? What's the legacy we want to leave for our kids, our nephews, our nieces, the future of this world, and that's what I want to be a part of.
Man, you're more than a part of it. You're in the vanguard of it. And I'm sitting there thinking about your dad. He's probably like his whole life, man, I wish I could hug my son, but somebody might see me. Yeah. But I wish. And you opened his heart in that way by making the first move. That's beautiful. That's phenomenal. Yeah. And it was awesome. It's the Little League World Series on a few months back, and the winning team, I think, was from the United States, and I think they defeated a team from Taiwan. I think that's how it worked. But anyway, the winning team, the decisive game went to extra innings, and the losing team lost on a bunt play where they overthrew first base or something like that. So this kid makes an error, in like a scoreless tie that's gone to 10 innings. And these kids, the kids on the so-called losing team are just devastated. They're in tears. And the winning team, each member of the winning team came out and found a player on the other team and hugged him. Impromptu, on camera, in front of millions on network TV. And I thought, my generation didn't do that. The people before me didn't do that. You hoisted the trophy and there were clear division between the winners and losers in life. Yeah. So something is shifting. And where are these kids getting that model to do this? I don't know that they're getting it from other humans. I think they're getting it directly from spirit. I think they're bringing it into the world with them. And every generation that gets born, we like to romanticize. You remember the Indigo kids 25, 30 years ago, but we like to think that these new generations are bringing in some kind of pure and holy and innocent energy from spirit that's not corrupted by human foibles and misunderstandings and all of that we, the race consciousness, the collective consciousness that we inherit here. So you're doing ancient work and you're doing modern work and you're bringing it all together in just a beautiful and profound way. And I want to mention a name to you too, somebody to look into, and we're going to have her. She doesn't know it yet, I don't think, but we're going to have her in a soul session soon. Her name is Carol Pearson, and she's one of America's leading writers on Jungian work. She's a religious scientist in Columbia, Maryland, and has been in some classes online and has made some wonderful connections with people in the CSL and Holmes Institute circles, to talk about the archetypes and the transformation of the archetype. Real quickly, you mentioned the king, lover, magician, warrior archetype model of masculinity, and real fast you went by it and you said, but that's changing. Are there new plug-in names there?
For me, what I've been working with is vision, creativity, action, and synergy. Because really it's just what's the energy behind those. And when we can go into those, it actually puts it into more new thought terms for us, to those archetypes. It's really when we take the gender bias out of it, it's just vision, it's creativity, it's action, it's synergy, for that king, warrior, or king, lover, warrior, magician. So it really is about us engaging that creativity in a different way and engaging those archetypes in a different way that allows us to then be able to use them in the spiritual context. I mean, not that it's separate, but to make it more, I think, new thought friendly is what worked for me. A lot of the gay guys who were in and that I've done men's work with didn't really have as much of a connection with the king, warrior, lover, magician archetypes, just because it's like, we've already created our lives and an experience that sort of we don't want to participate in that, and rightly so. And so I think that's just one of the many gifts of the LGBTQ community for us, and being able to especially move in this new direction of how do we take the gender role out of this stuff? It's ridiculous. Like, we as men are brought up like 2, 3, 5, maybe 7, to suppress the emotions. Big boys don't cry, all of that stuff. And so we as men are trained at an early age to press that down. And then society wonders why are all these dysfunctional things going on with men? If you don't have access to the whole self, which all of us have, very plainly, because they've been ascribed to a gender. Oh, I don't want to do that, or I'm going to be wimpy, or I'm going to look less, macho or whatever it is. But the truth of it is that it's just denied us this fullness experience of our own wholeness. And honestly, I think it causes a ton of damage. The lone wolf syndrome, where we feel like we have to do it all ourselves as men, like we can't ask for help, we can't have these emotions, we can't express them, we can't explore them. And that's a part of the healing process that, we're going through in this community is how do we fully embrace the whole self? Because that's what we're all here to do, men, women. And when we put certain things with certain genders and are like, men are thinkers and doers and women are emotional and spiritual, and it cuts out, half of the joy in our lives, as if we could do that. I mean, we try and do that, maybe. But it just never succeeds because it always comes out sideways. And then we see situations many years ago, like we saw in Columbine, where 2 kids came out with the guns, and now we're many, many years past that, and we've got that craziness everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, that was heavy.
No, I know that's heavy, and especially in light of recent. Yeah. And the authenticity that you speak of is paradoxically, we're becoming more aware but less self-conscious, if that makes sense. To be in the moment. You talk about like looking over your shoulder at maybe the ancestors or the larger culture around you that's watching you, that's expecting you to live up to certain expectations of manhood, to be free of all of that and to just forge ahead and do what you do. And in a burst of creative genius is such freedom. Hang on. My screen just went dark again. There we go. To be able to be the poet and be the artist and be the musician and the softer things, to become a soft man that is not repressed at all, but is genuine in their approach. I also wanted to mention, going back to the men's summit and the speakers that you have, the guidelines that you sent out, I thought were brilliant, because you talk about having this not just positioned for new thought, but for anybody. And one of the things you had told me in the boilerplate that you sent out beforehand was, don't dwell on God. Try not to get all religious about it. Don't try not to use terms that are going to be off-putting to somebody, because immediately again the walls, the gates come down or something, and then, well, I don't buy that. To keep it in the realm of the spiritual reality, which it seems like everybody can agree on. Everybody agrees that there's some kind of power. Even the atheist says that there's some kind of power that's beyond what I can do, that made me. And if we're going to talk about that and not over define it, then I'm there for it. So I really look forward to seeing what these other guys, that was what was going through my mind when I was working with you on screen that day, was what are all the other guys saying? Because usually, like, if you're at a physical event, there's a speaker before you and one before him, and you sit there and you oh God, he said what now I got to scratch that out of my nose. He just covered all that. So I'm real curious to hear how much of this all kind of lines up in congruity, or some of the speakers, because I know them, are going to bring in stuff from left field, and that's going to be awesome too. This begins this Sunday, September the 25th.
The 22nd.
I'm sorry, the 22nd. That's right. Next Wednesday is the 25th. The 22nd, and it runs through
the 27th.
The 27th. Okay.
And what we have, just practical terms, we have 4 speakers every day. Plus, we have a bonus interview of the podcast. So you could watch 5 pieces of information every day. And the talks are about 20, 30 minutes. The interviews are a little bit longer. But it's you can go in at your own time. You can go in and check the videos out in your own time. So there isn't it. We tried to make it as easy as possible for all of us in our busy lives these days. And if you miss a day, you know, just check out the next day. Or if you're short on time, just pick the one that really calls to you. But I mean, these are incredible people in our movement, and I'm just so pleased at how it turned out. That it's incredible, and it's of course open to men and women, non-binary individuals who want to show up. We actually had one person who identifies as non-binary speak at this, Mark Anthony Lloyd. We had a great conversation about that. But it's free. You can sign up. We want to introduce ourselves to our larger community of CSL and of New Thought, and saying, hey, this is what we want to offer. This is how we want to show up, and to better our community, and start there. And then hopefully it expands out, and these men's groups that get started hopefully bring men from all kinds of walks of life into our spiritual philosophy. Like I got brought into this spiritual philosophy, and it has been such a blessing. So yeah, I go ahead and sign up. It's at newthoughtmens.community. And
we have the link. We have the link in the chat.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And I know it works because I just went and signed up.
Awesome. Nice, Lisa.
Wait, I've got a question. I mean, is this this is recorded, I know, so can people access this afterwards as recordings?
Yeah. Afterwards, there will be the opportunity to become a member of our community and join the membership site. So if you want to, as an individual, you can join, or if you want to, as a community, and have access to those videos for your men's group in a community, then we have two different kind of options going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, this is groundbreaking, and again, thank you on behalf of all of us for your great work on this, and in the years to come. So
many more. And it's the joy that I have for it. I love this. It's changed my life. I still love doing it after 30 years. I'm still so totally passionate about it. You know, this is what I'm here for. When we talked about, you know, what is the mission? What is the purpose? What is the reason for me being? You know, we all have those unique experiences that we're here to bring. And this just aligns with mine so perfectly that it's like, okay, this is what I'm here to do. And that's the thing. I'm in alignment with my soul purpose. And yeah, I'm so overjoyed about that.
There's no greater gift than that, man. I mean, everybody who comes to our centers, everybody who signs up for a class, that's their hope and dream.
Yeah.
So congratulations and bravo and Godspeed to you. Thank you so much. Reverend Eamon Duffy, our guest tonight in this latest soul session. Lisa and David, are there questions from Facebook for us?
No, I think we're going to get a lot of play afterwards. It was mostly me and David talking about what Eamon was talking about.
Okay.
All right. Let's hear it then. Come on, Lisa.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that one of my favorite things was when you mentioned the hug story. And I will tell you why, because that kind of work actually makes the world safer for women.
Yeah.
When men can physically express with each other, then they're not holding it all on a woman, and that feeds into that lone wolf, and that just makes the world a whole lot safer for us. So, like, more power to you. Thank you for doing this kind of work.
Thanks, Lisa.
You know.
Yeah. I think it was good that you both brought up the fact that we don't have any process for people moving from, you know, teenager to adult. You know, we don't have a process for that in our, or at least none that I know of. You know, so, and I think we missed that. Whereas, like, you know, the indigenous peoples have got ceremonies, they got customs, they got ways of actually leading people into adulthood.
We have processes, David, but they're membership based. In other words, like scouting, you know, like Demolay, like different groups and different things. They're religiously based, or they're what do you call it? Fraternal organization based, or something like this. But as far as across the culture as a whole, no. And in different ethnicities, you have this. In certain, you know, certain ethnic patterns, it's the family bonds lead to those kinds of ritual experiences. But by and large, no, because it's the rugged individualism and all like, read David Alexander's wonderful new book where he talks about self-reliance. The misinterpretation of Emerson's essay on self-reliance, and everybody, the lone wolf, right? Everybody sets out and they're all in it for themselves. So this is what we're seeking to heal.
I loved the interview with David because one, he's just such a beautiful man, but he actually really educated me on our philosophy, and it's a liberation philosophy. I mean, it was started by the women's suffragette movement and has been a part of, the equal rights movement and still a part. I mean, if we even look at the modern version of that, it's, Michael Beckwith and, Ronnie Coleman and, all of those people that have participated in creating this liberation philosophy. And it's that we're seeking, right? It's that beyond us space. We're so wrapped up in this, like, oh, what you look like or how you are or what, all of this stuff. And it's really like, I mean, we're 99.9% the same. Like, there is so little difference between us that to have, the beauty of the nature around us, to have purple flowers and red flowers and yellow flowers and trees and different kinds, like, it would be boring if we were all monocropped, if we were all the same, right? But spirit doesn't want that. It wants diversity. So everybody's different. And I think that's the beauty in that. And that we're all seeking to find that oneness, that sameness on that soul level, with all of this diversity on the physical level and uniqueness on diversity on the physical level. That's the paradox that we're living with as human beings. So.
I think I can stop the live stream and we can still talk if you want.
Well, I just have to say, Lisa, David, so good to see you. You guys were in my ministerial classes, so I'm grateful to be here with all of you and just feeling the love and this.
I remember you shaving your head at one of the retreats.
That's right. I did shave my head at one of the retreats up there. Was letting go of my challenges with dyslexia and also letting go of my old life and, becoming a minister. Thank you for that reminder, Lisa.
Well, and your work was in its infancy when Lisa and I knew you in ministerial school.
I know, you come so far.
Thank you.
It's beautiful to watch this thing flower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did want to speak to what you had talked about, Lisa, in creating safety. And I think it's necessary for all of us to really support and create safety for ourselves as men, for women, and for kids. This is the only way in which we truly thrive, is by creating safety. And that we as men have to do that inner work. We have to really work with that anger and that pain and that stuff from the past to be able to show up for our beloveds, for our friends, for our family, for our community, for our nation, for the world, to be able to model this. And bottom line is we're working on how do I integrate this in such a way that I get to model it by the way that I live. And knowing that we're human beings and that we screw up all the time and that we're always going to be human beings, but that striving for that excellence, that striving for that wholeness and fullness, that striving for that greatness to really show up and to be a part of, creating a sustainable world that works for everyone. That's the exciting piece. And that's one of the reasons why I do this men's work. I have, I don't have kids of my own. I have nieces. I have, sisters. I have a brand new niece, a grand niece. So, I want this health and well-being. I have nephews. who need this and want this, you know, and I feel this work is just so powerful and so necessary. I am biased in this, of course, but I have loved it and enjoyed it, and I feel that's like the biggest piece of it, is to be able to create the society that we're truly, the spiral upwards, right? Spiral dynamics, that we're spiraling upwards to create this evolution of our kind, and that we're so incredible. And David, to speak to yours, yeah, I agree. The rite of passages need to happen, because if we don't mark those, then we're not able to kind of move into it. And when we look at the larger society, we're probably stuck in a teenage, if not younger, kind of evolution, where it's more about me and me and what I'm doing. And, you know, I mean, definitely the social media hasn't helped. Look at me scenario. But really what we're wanting to do is to draw that line and saying, how do we move into mature adulthood as a society, which says we take care of the planet, we take care of the people, we take care of the children, like, not like we'll take care of some of them, but we'll take care of all of them. Like, that's the thing that allows us to then grow and evolve as a species, allows us to then move into this greater evolution and greater possibility. I honestly don't know how well we're going to how we're going to move through this technological age without a spiritual maturing.
Yeah.
And I think it's necessary now more than ever to engage our spiritual selves to keep up. And you mentioned Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell had a great quote that was like, the religion or spirituality of the day needs to reflect what is currently going on in society. And I think we haven't really caught up with that. And so I think that's why all the struggles with social media, with kids growing up, with, you know, all the challenges that we're going through around technology, and they're not going to stop. You know, they're pushing forward. So, but there's hope. And that's what we get to be a part of.
Yeah, Western religion has pathologized the human condition in such a way as that it's all about redemption, and it's about the next life and gaining entry into that. And meanwhile, you know, we grind people underfoot, and we despoil this planet. And yeah, so there's got to be some kind of organic connection to, as you say, what's going on now, what's happening right here, you know, the immediate experience of the moment, where the divine is, the ubiquity. I love the expression, the ubiquity of the divine. It's in everything, and it's seeking expression through everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you again, man. This has been phenomenal. We must do this again.
Great conversations. Oh my gosh. I loved it.
Fantastic. And we're going to shop this video as far as we can, and try to drive as much traffic to the Men's Summit through this as we can. And once again, thank you so much, Reverend Eamon. And again, a huge shout out to Reverend Lisa, Reverend David, Reverend Katie, Danielle Mercadell, making this happen. Because it's now maybe we have a new platform we can use, bug free.